I'm Dan. I'm one of the bird keepers here at the Cincinnati Zoo, and thanks for tuning in to our bald eagle edition of the Home Safari. I'm here with 4 of our bald eagles. We have Irene there in the middle, sitting on her perch, actually Irene is in the back. On the perch is Cara. Down in front we have Griffin, and coming in from the left you might see Klaus coming back. These guys are all rehabbed eagles, meaning they were all hatched in the wild and had some unfortunate injury happen to them that meant they probably might not be able to survive as well in the wild as they could otherwise. Griffin down here, you can kind of see his one wing is his right wing's a little weird. He actually was injured out in Oklahoma. So he has both of his wings, but he can't really extend his right wing at all. So he's what's called non-flighted, completely non-flighted. Irene, our big female, who just hopped up on the perch, she's on the left. She came to us from Tennessee. She was actually rehabbed by a place outside the Memphis Zoo and in conjunction with the Memphis Zoo. She's our biggest bird. She's our big female. She's about 8.5 pounds, which is about the same as a gallon of milk. All of these guys weigh between 6.5 and 8.5 pounds. Klaus, way in the back there, he's our smaller male. He's about 6 pounds. Griffin is our other male. He's about 7 pounds. And Carla, the other girl on the perch, she's about 7.5 pounds. When you hear these guys get up to 12 pounds, that's for one that would be a bird up in Alaska. The Alaskan birds are way bigger. Hopefully these guys will eat some of the herring that you guys might be able to see in the frame there. They get a very wide variety of diet here at the zoo. Today happened to be herring day. Tomorrow they will be getting rabbits, and Saturday they'll get salmon. They also get quail and rat, and sometimes they get goat chunks. So that's actually part of the enrichment we do for them, is varying their diet to make sure that it's both nutritionally complete and they just have a variety in their diet. Plus we'll put it in different places so they kind of have to look for it. Now some of these guys have pretty cool stories. If you look at Klaus, way in the back, he's the one in the shadow on the left. He actually was found in a backyard in Orlando, Florida on Christmas Eve 2017. He had a broken wing. He was getting around okay. He was caught and brought into human care, taken to a rehab facility because he wasn't able to fly normally. He had been finding something to eat on the wild because his break had actually mostly healed, which meant that it couldn't really be repaired very well. So he was rehabbed at a facility down there, and then because he was unreleasable, he was actually brought up here to live in our habitat as a display bird. So these guys are all non-releasable, and one of the first questions we get is, will we ever breed them? We actually are not permitted by Fish and Wildlife to breed these guys for a really good reason, which is that we don't need to. The bald eagles have actually recovered so well in the United States from their crash of the late 70s that we're not allowed to breed them. We don't need to. Fish and Wildlife doesn't want us to. But we have bred bald eagles in the past. Across the pathway from this exhibit, we have a large enclosure that currently has our stellars in it, and from 1978 to 2002, we bred 20 bald eagles here that were all released into the wild to help repopulate the species. Back in the 70s, there were only a few bald eagle nests in Ohio. It was very hard to find them. Now there are over 350 of them as of last year, and we had about 450 eaglets in Ohio last year. One of our other great stories out here is the girl on the left who just turned around and is kind of walking between those two. That's Carla. She also came from the Orlando area. She came from just southwest of Orlando, and she was actually injured in a territory fight with another eagle. So she has both of her wings. She is physically intact, but she has a soft tissue injury like a tendon injury, so she can't fully extend her wing and she cannot fly normally. The big girl on the left, Irene, she actually came from Tennessee. She was an adult that somehow had broken her wing, and it was unfortunately so broken that the vets down there had to amputate it. So she's actually the easiest one of these to pick out of the adults because she's both the largest, and if you can see the other side of her, she's missing almost her entire right wing. Now, she is an adult. She was brought into human care as an adult. She's probably at least 7. Klaus is also at least 7. He was brought into human care as an adult, so we're not really sure how old they are. Griffin, our young guy, the easy one to pick out, he's about 3. He's just this year starting to get more of the white head that is characteristic of this species. And Cara still has a little bit of her brown, so she's probably 4 or 5. Now, the reason they turn white-headed is so that both the juveniles and adults can tell each other apart. So adults go, okay, I'm going to pick another adult. And so that the juveniles have better camouflage when they're hunting. One of the most common questions we get here, which Pat was clever enough to ask, was why don't they fly away? And these guys are all non-flighted, so they can get a little bit of flight off of these branches. This was actually a very carefully designed habitat to make sure it was safe for them. They could get up and get down safely. Bryce wanted to know, are they endangered? They are actually not on the endangered species list anymore, which is a really good thing because that means they have recovered sufficiently to be taken off the list. However, it's also perfectly fine that they're not on the list because they actually have their own law protecting them called the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. So even though they're off the list and have done a really good recovery with about 300,000 bald eagles out in the wild, they are not considered endangered under the Endangered Species Act. Katie wants to know, are their claws sharp? They actually have talons on their feet, and they are quite sharp. They will use them to both hold things on the ground that they would be eating, and if they were catching a fish, they would use those talons to grab the fish out of the water and hold it while they fly off with it to somewhere they want to eat it. If you ever have a chance to see a bald eagle fishing in the wild, it's amazing. Watching them swoop down and grab a fish out of the water is a great thing to see. Peyton wants to know, when do they get a white head? They get a white head, fully white head, at about 5 years of age. Fully white head will look like Irene there in the middle. Carla, I don't know if you guys can see it, to her right has a little bit of her brown left, just a little bit. She'll be fully white-headed the next time she molts or gets a new set of feathers in. And then Griffin is about halfway into getting his white head, so he's about 3. And over the next couple years, if you guys see us on Facebook or see images or come visit the zoo, which we would greatly appreciate, you'll actually see him get to be more white, and eventually, in about 2 years, these guys will all look the same. Do they have any predators? Asked Jason. They don't really have predators per se. They are pretty much at the top of their food chain. Yeah, they are a predator, so they don't really have predators. They could, I mean, if they're injured, something else might try to take them, but if they're healthy, nothing's probably going to mess with them. Ellie asks, can they see in the dark? These guys are what's called diurnal, so they are pretty much entirely daylight oriented. They have really excellent vision during daylight and not that great vision at nighttime. I mean, we can kind of see in the dark, but these guys are not adapted to see in the dark like something like an owl. So when it's nighttime, they pretty much just go hang out in a tree and wait for sunlight. Taylor asks, how many eggs do they lay? They will usually lay 1 or 2. Most eagle species will do that. Our stellars will lay 1 or 2. These guys, when we bred them previously, would lay 1 or 2. And that's, I mean, occasionally you'll see the cool eagle cam with 3 chicks, but usually it's 1 or 2. Annie asks, are males or females larger? That's a really great question. Females are generally a little bit bigger. You can see Irene there, right on the perch in front, is our big female. And that's actually so that they have this space inside because they need to produce eggs. So they need a body that's a little bit bigger. The size of these guys kind of overlap. So our female Cara and our male Griffin are about the same size and weight. So there's a lot of overlap, but generally if you see a really big eagle, she's probably a female. Weston wants to know where they are most commonly found. These guys are found all the way from Florida all the way up to Alaska, and you're going to find them near bodies of water. If you've ever seen the photos of bald eagles hanging out in Alaska with 30 of them in a tree, then these guys are sea eagles, so they're going to be near water pretty much all the time. One of their main food sources is fish, so they often will nest along rivers. Around the Cincinnati area, there used to be a bald eagle nest on the Whitewater and at least one on the Ohio east of town. So they're going to hang out near water. They will eat things besides fish, but that's their main and favorite diet. Liam asks, do they like to swim? They don't really like to swim per se. They will gladly go in the water if they either want to take a bath or if there is food in the water, and we sometimes do actually put fish down in their pool for them to get out of the pool. But they can swim, kind of, but they would not really choose to. They're not at all adapted for swimming. James wants to know, what is their wingspan? If these guys were all able to extend their wings fully, which some of them sadly can't, they would have about a 6 to 7, maybe 8 foot wingspan, which is pretty much as big as an NBA player. So even though they're not very large, they have a really long wingspan. Was hoping that some of these guys would come up and have some of the herring that we put out for them so that you could see them actually use that big bill and talons that we got for them. What is the largest eagle? That's actually a 3-way tie between the Philippine eagle, the Stellar sea eagle, which we have here, and I want to say the wedge-tail. It depends on whether you go by longest, biggest wingspan, or heaviest. Stellars that we have here are actually the heaviest. Kayla asks, how many did they get down to in the 70s? They got down to, I want to say at least, they were critically endangered in the 70s. They were down to about, I think it was a handful of breeding pairs in Ohio. That was actually due to, the entire reason for their decline was the use of the pesticide DDT, which, while it was a great pesticide and helped us out in a lot of ways, animals would ingest the insecticide somehow, and then eagles would eat them, which meant that the eagles wound up getting a lot of DDT in their system. And what it would actually do was it would cause the eggshells to get really thin. And then when the birds would lay their eggs, just from trying to sit on them and incubate them, they would crush the eggs. So the reproductive rate went to basically 0 once DDT got up to a high enough level in the States. And thankfully, DDT was banned for use in the United States, and we have since been able to have these guys make a great recovery. Callie asks, do their bones break easily? I would say they would break as easily as any other bone, but they do have something really cool about their bones. The reason these guys can be so big but be so light is their bones are very, very hollow. As opposed to our bones that are really solid and heavy, these guys have a really thin wall of their bone. They're very strong, but they're hollow, which keeps them really lightweight. Rochelle wants to know, why does Griffin look different? Griffin looks different because he is a kid. He is only about 3, and give him about another 2 years, and he will look like everybody else. He will be a grown-up then, and he will have his full adult plumage. So I do want to thank you guys for joining us for this Bald Eagle edition of the Home Safari. Thank you for tuning in. We will have another Home Safari tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And if you would like to build a nest like these guys do, which they actually build really cool giant nests that weigh 2,000 pounds and they're crazy big. We have an activity on our website with some directions for you guys to build your own bald eagle nest. You know, go get sticks out of your yard. Your mom will love it. It'd be great.